And this really has been the little show that could.
Yeah.
But for people who are new to the concept of Kim's Convenience, just explain the story and what inspired it.
It's a story about it's actually a story about a convenience store that everyone can relate to. But it's set within a Toronto Korean family, the Kims. And the major, I guess, plot point is the father and son. They had a fight a long time ago. Son ran away from home, and now both the play and the TV series kind of involves their reconciliation over a long period of time. But it's very funny. Yeah.
So what inspired this? I mean, do you spend a lot of time in convenience stores? What was the...
Yeah, well, when my parents moved here from Korea, we stayed with my uncle. My uncle had a store, Kim's Grocer, on Black Creek Drive and Weston Road. It's still there. It's called Kim's Grocer, but the owners are Somalian now. So that was the first stop in my journey to Canada. But then, like in the 80s, growing up, not every Korean, but most Koreans, we kind of cornered that market, so to speak.
Nice pun. Yeah. I'll assume that was intended. So early on, I always love these stories. It was rejected by pretty much every major Toronto theater company. Why were they telling you they didn't want it? Like,
I don't know. I don't know. They just said, "Oh, this is great," but and we had the same. Paul was like, we put a package together. Paul was on that name. His name was on that list. Wayne Mengesha was on it to direct it, and Ken McKenzie to design. I don't know. They just said they weren't for whatever reason, but they didn't actually explain why.
I like to think of it as it's one of these plays where when you read it and you don't hear the voices and you read it, it's a very simple story. It's a story about a family and the immigrant experience and people. You read things, but I like to think of it. And yes, I'm comparing you to Shakespeare. It's one of these plays that really needs to be heard out loud, and you need to see it performed before the other shoe drops.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so successful during the Fringe, is people could actually hear the voices that were being spoken from the script.
Right.
And once that happened, people could make a definite connection with what's going on, what they're seeing versus what they're hearing, versus what they're reading. And there's something wonderful about the script that really is brought to life once you see it performed live.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where it's easy to discount a story like that just because it seems very simple in terms of structure, in terms of through lines, but there's such incredible heart in the writing, and I like to think in the performances that really captured the audience's attention. And it's hard to ignore a show that's completely sold out its run during the Fringe Festival, wins a bunch of awards, and gets asked back to the new play, to the Best of Fringe afterwards.
Yeah, that's definitely putting your money where your mouth is. But for a young playwright, Ins, you get all those no's. What made you say, you know what, I'm gonna take it to Fringe. I'm not letting this die.
Yeah, I just wanted to see it. It started out as at the Fujian Asian Canadian Theatre Playwright Unit, and it took me about 6-7 years to kind of finish it. And so all that work, I just want to see it on stage once. That was my go-to. I just want to see. And so the Fringe Festival was an amazing organization, festival that anyone can go up on stage. Well, you had to get in first, but once you get in, anything, can go on stage. So I just wanted to see it on stage. And then I found out about the Best New Play contest that they have, and then entered it. It won that, and then that's how it got in.
And then away to the races.
And then,
Paul, you were in that very first Fringe production.
Yeah.
You play Mr. Kim, the shop owner, who's also called Appa, Korean for father. What was it about the character that just caught your attention?
He was just so authentic and so, the writing was tremendous. When I first read Kim's Convenience, it was just a couple of scenes. Originally, back in 2005, I think Ins got some money to present a couple of scenes at the
Paul
Toronto.
was involved from the ground up, from the workshops.
Right. Wow.
The play wasn't even done, and he...
Well, and that was it, right? Like, I came in and I read these two scenes that Ins had written that we were going to be presenting at the Toronto Diaspora Dialogues. And the thing that struck me immediately was how heartfelt, how authentic, and how truthful and honest these two scenes sounded to me. And immediately I knew this is a story that I can instantly relate to. It's my story. It's my family's story. And it's so heartening. You don't realize that when you don't hear your stories or see your stories up on stage or on the screen, it's you don't realize the effect it really has on you until you see something that truly represents you. And that's what happened when I read these first two scenes. And I knew from that point, this is something that I felt very passionate about and something that I needed to be a part of for my own sort of spirit, my soul as an artist, as a Korean Canadian. And it was exciting to finally, to have something like this presented to you as an actor. It's a wonderful gift.
The Appa that you bring to life, how close is he to your Appa?
There are elements. My dad's a lot cooler in terms of temperament. But when he goes, which is interesting. Yeah.
Don't let the lid off.
Yeah, that's pretty much, don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear. And it's funny because growing up, my Oma was always the one who was very emotional and very, very expressive in terms of yelling at us when we were just misbehaving. Right. And my dad was always the cool cucumber, but when he went, you knew you would cross the line. And so I brought elements of him into Speak, especially his quirky sense of humor. The Appa that I play in Kim's Convenience, his humor and his sort of wry, weird way of looking at things is definitely my dad. When he's teasing Janet or the other members of the family, that's definitely my dad. But he's also an amalgam of all these great, strong Korean men I grew up with as a kid. My uncles, my grandfathers, the ajishis or the elder gentlemen at the churches that I grew up with, or friends of my dad's. I mean, these were all influences on who I was growing up and the exposure that I had in real life to what a Korean man was supposed to be like.
Now, you've been playing Mr. Kim for so long.
Yeah.
Has he changed who Paul is?
I think so. It's again,
in what ways?
Like I've said, it's an incredible gift. I'm a dad. I have two sons whom I adore dearly. And there are moments where it's just like, oh, okay. And it gives an incredible perspective when you actually have kids as well. And it really colors my temperament and the way I look at things and how the sense of perspective of playing a patriarch like Appa and how strong-willed he is, but his capacity to love and to change and to learn from his mistakes has deeply influenced me as well. And, my kids are incredibly proud of the work that I'm doing. They get a kick out of seeing my face on posters all around the city and stuff. And it's helped me grow tremendously, not only as a father, as a human being, but as an actor as well. Because to be given the opportunity to play a role like this, it is a gift. It is a blessing. And it's one of these things because he's so close to me and so dear to me and I've played him for so long. He's a character that I know intimately through and through. And because of Ins's generosity, he's allowed me to help develop the character as well. And his tremendous writing as a backbone to all this has been, you don't get this opportunity, especially as an artist of color.
Yeah.
And
what a beautiful tip of the hat to you, Ins, that you've created this vehicle that has allowed a Korean actor to have this kind of experience here in Canada. And now you're doing another first. You're writing for TV, adapting, never written for TV before, but adapting it. What's the biggest challenge to turning Kim's Convenience into something for the small screen?
I think the biggest challenge was writing with a group, collaborating. Because you write a play and you're all by yourself. It's a solitary experience for most playwrights.
Right.
Over a long period of time. And for TV, it's with a lot of other personalities and voices and incredible imaginations in a room for a very short amount of time. So my learning curve throughout this whole experience has been just like vertical, like not even a hill, just like straight up, straight up.
What's the TV version allowed you to do that you couldn't do in the play?
Oh, we go places. Like in the play, we're in the store for most of the play, and then one little flashback, and then we're in the church for like one scene. But the TV show, we're in Chung's apartment, Janet's room. We go into Oma and Appa's bedroom many times. Little corners of the store, back of the cooler, out on the streets. So we get to see. It's just expanding the world of the play.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, just like in the play, a big part of the show is the clash between generations. Here's a listen to Mr. Kim and his daughter Janet arguing over the photography she's taking at art school.
What was that about?
That was about you, great artist.
Okay, since when do you think I'm a great artist?
Since this,
Why are my photos there?
I sell them. You need to take more.
Are you insane? These are for school, they're not for sale. Is this all that's left?
Yeah, I sell 6 today.
Appa, you can't just sell my stuff.
It's not you stop. You stop is our stop.
I took these pictures.
Who pay for camera that take those picture?
Whose eye looks at the viewfinder and whose finger pushed the shutter button?
Who give to you that eye and that finger?
God did.
Okay, but...
Appa, I'm supposed to be in a show. I can't get new ones mounted in time.
What you talking? I get these from drugstore. 3 for $5.
This is my work. Appa, you can't
And
just go
this
and
is
sell...
my work. You is my work.
Yep, she is your word. That's from the new TV comedy Kim's Convenience. Paul, your character obviously loves his kids, but they're just constantly trying to figure out, how do you relate to them? What's behind their struggle to connect?
I think it really is a generational conflict. Appa is very old school. He's very comfortable with the way he was raised. He knows what he's done has worked. It might not be the most glamorous thing in the world, but it's worked. It's put food on the table for his kids, put a roof over their heads. He knows this. It's tried and true. This is it. He looks at Janet and he sees incredible opportunity that is being wasted because she's going into art school, she's taking photography, and he's really, really concerned that she's not going to be able to take care of herself. And that's I think the crux of a lot of what's going on is he doesn't see her choices as being viable options, and she is on a trajectory, and then Janet is played by Andrea Bang, who is fantastic. She's going to be a superstar after the show airs. She's much like we are when we're younger. We want to pave our own way. We want to blaze those trails. We want to do what we feel passionate about. And yes, it's going to be a struggle, but let me struggle through it. Let me find my way.
Right.
And, as much as Appa would love to let her do that, he is so concerned and he loves her so much, he doesn't want her to suffer the way he suffered. And part of it is as well, he looks at it as, I worked like this so you wouldn't have to. I don't want you to struggle in your life. I want your life to be, full of comfort.
Right.
And
well, you chose a life in the arts.
Yeah.
How did your Appa respond to that?
I think my parents were in denial for a long time. And it's very funny. There's
He'll
so
go
many
to medical
similarities.
school after this.
That's exactly it. When I first told my parents I wanted to go into acting, there was a moment of silence. And then my mom said, but then you'll teach acting, right? You'll be a teacher for acting.
Right.
And I said, no, I want to act. And, look of concern. My dad was quiet the whole time. And it wasn't until I was in third-year university that my dad and I had a big knockdown, drag-out argument over what was going on, where my life was going. And, I remember saying to him, you don't understand what I'm doing. You don't understand the process I'm going through. You don't understand what I want to accomplish. You have no idea what an actor does.
Yeah.
And that's when I found out that my uncle, my dad's older brother, whom he loved dearly, and who had passed away at the age of 55, was an actor in Korea. My dad had never, ever mentioned that. And his idea of what acting was in Korea, actors in Korea, it's the same profession, but it's a different world, right? They have different traditions, different ways of working. And my uncle was poor. He was struggling. He was very fulfilled, in terms of an artist, spiritually, he was great, but he was always struggling to make ends meet. And my dad saw that, and it killed him. And so he was deathly afraid that I would follow in his footsteps. And that's when I realized, okay, here we go. He's got a different perspective. And so we had a good talk about it, which is great. And it was the first time my dad had ever really opened up to me about something like that.
Beautiful. What about you, Ins? Like, you also in the arts, did you have a hard time convincing mom and dad about that?
Not really. I think my parents are kind of not the average kind of stereotypical Asian parents who say you got to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. My mom kept telling me throughout my career, she always talked about my mask. She wouldn't say the way I looked. I don't know why she said mask, but she said, your mask is not right.
Really?
And I think, and I took that as, look at everyone on TV. Look at everyone in the movies, in North America.
Yeah.
There's no one that looks like you.
Oh, that's what you're
So
saying.
there's no
Oh, okay,
there's
okay,
no one to
okay.
point to say, okay, here's the trajectory. You can become a blank.
Yeah.
There was nobody. And so it was like, yeah, just be more your career path.
Yeah,
is limited.
Let's explore that a little bit because that's the experience of a lot of people. I'm not alone when I say that for me as an Indigenous person, seeing Buffy St. Marie on Sesame Street was the first moment of, oh my goodness, she can be on TV, then I could be on TV.
Yeah.
2016, what do you think is happening in the state of television? I mean, there's a bit more diversity. You know, there's shows like Blackish and Fresh Off the Boat, but
Sure.
but how are things diversity-wise?
I mean, you could just, there's a lot of change happening. I think that's very, very encouraging. But I think it's time and it's timely that there are people, you know, Master of None.
Yeah.
That thing's huge.
Yeah.
But it's still few. It's still few. But I think it's time. It's a season where a lot of artists who have gone through training are now coming out. And making a voice for themselves and staking a claim. But it's still hard.
I want to play another little clip. Mr. Kim is sort of an Archie Bunker character. He definitely has his own prejudices, especially in the case of Japanese people. Take a listen.
Janet, call police.
What happened?
Cars no parking zone. Talk to police.
Let me guess. It's a Honda?
No.
Mitsubishi.
No. Okay, it's a Toyota, but still, no parking zone.
How many times do I have to tell you, Appa? Japanese people aren't the only ones driving Japanese cars.
Janet, 1910, Japan attack Korea. You buy Japanese, you're guilty by association.
What about your Canon SLR camera?
Appa get half a price.
Your money still went to Japan.
Half a price? I rip off Japan.
Hard to fight against that argument. That's Paul Sun-Hyung Lee as Mr. Kim in the TV comedy Kim's Convenience. Paul, doing the accent. Can you talk about that? How does it feel to do that?
It's great. It's a very funny, like, the accent can become a bone of contention for a lot of people. But I'll tell you a little story. Growing up as a young actor of Asian descent, I was called upon to put on many, many Asian accents. Chinese, Japanese, Filipino.
Of course.
You know, it's like, yeah, you look kind of the same, so just sound more Asian, basically, was the note I was given.
Nice.
Which is a bit frustrating, but for whatever reason, I could not do a Korean accent to save my life. It was one of those things where I think I had a mental block in my head because growing up, I wanted to assimilate and be so Canadian that subconsciously, I just pushed away my Korean heritage. And my Korean accent would sound like I was Russian. Couldn't do it.
Russian?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
terrible. And it wasn't until I read Kim's Convenience, those first two scenes from Ins, and because they were so honest and so authentic, and the way Ins writes is fantastic too. If you read it out loud, the accent's almost there. The syntax, the rhythms.
Right.
And it was like a key being turned in my head. My dad's voice suddenly started coming out. And it was like, oh, okay. And that's when I knew I had this very visceral connection to the piece. And I knew this character and I knew how to play him. And, skipping forward to now, the accent that you're hearing right now has evolved over the course of this close to 10 years that we've been working on it. Just because there is a moment where if I went full Korean accent with it, it would be almost incomprehensible for a lot of people to hear.
Okay.
So you hear me cheating on a lot of words here and there. I'm not the full Korean. I've pulled back on the accent for clarity's sake.
Yeah.
And that's just so we can get points across,
Yeah,
story
of course.
points, this and that across. I hear every once in a while people, he doesn't sound Korean. Why can't they ever get Korean ajushis right? Blah, blah, blah. But then I get people who write and say, oh my God, that's my dad. That's your
Right.
dad. That's our dad. This is our family. You can't please everybody. But the accent is part of Appa through and through. He gets very frustrated when people don't understand him. And in fact, I've had people come up and say, if you were a lot more clear and enunciated, people would understand you. And I had difficulty understanding everything that Appa says, to which I respond, well, think about how he feels. It's a part of his life. When people don't understand him, that's part of his character too. That's what he has to put up with.
Perfect.
So we flip the mirror type thing.
Thank you both for coming in. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but it sounds like it's going to be one fun ride.